a great show yesterday, and today there's a wonderful guest backstage who's going to be talking about a topic that's near and dear to many of us at some point in our lives, and of course that's menopause. But before we get to that, let's talk a little bit about you and the wonderful work that you're doing. We've got your book there behind you, Rise, a Girl's Struggle for More, and you have another book about the holidays. You've got a chapter in there, and you've got something else coming out. So let me just spotlight you and just tell us about your journey as an international best-selling author, Amazon's hot new releases, #1 release. Tell us more.
You're so kind. I always think, oh my gosh, who's she talking about? But it's been really, it's been an amazing journey just to get here, years and years. And so I always want to share with people that it just doesn't happen overnight. But yes, this has been a really busy couple of months. And so Rise, A Girl's Struggle for More is doing very well on Amazon. I'm so excited and just overwhelmed. And so new things are happening with this book. And this is the one for the holidays that Texas Sister Press has put out. And I was selected with several other authors because you wrote the short story doesn't mean you get into the book. So I feel very honored to be with this group. And this is for adults. And so it's all about fun ways and things about the holidays. People who love Comic-Con, people who love supernatural, people who want something funny to read. It's all in here. So, and mine's called King's First Christmas, about a puppy dog that gets saved and he has his very first Christmas. And so lots of little fun special things happen there. But yeah, just getting all ready for the holidays. How about you, Dr. Jacalyn?
Yes, Diane, I'm getting ready as well. And we had a show on earlier today about etiquette and manners, which is so important, especially when it comes to the holidays. What are the appropriate things to do or things that are not appropriate to do? So I'm taking some of that into consideration as I get ready to do my holiday travel. So it's going to be fun.
I'll have to go back and listen to that. I was writing probably when you were having your show, but I really do try to watch your shows. Etiquette to me is so important, and it'd be lovely also for you to have a Zane on because she teaches etiquette. I think you know Zane Caruth. She introduced you and I think what's so sad about it in today's world where everything goes that we throw out some of the customs, and I think we need these customs: how to set a table properly, how to dress properly for dinner. Don't always eat in front of the TV. I mean, I do, but when it comes to, I actually love to do Sunday dinners. And when I was living back home in Kingwood, close to my mom, then, you know, Sundays we could have people over, but I love putting out the china. I love everything about that. And I think it's important to teach young people to kiddos how you dress properly for dinner. One of the things in the Rise story is really fun that I learned that my mom shared with me, which was, and we kind of did this a little bit when I was a kid, but where kids do not eat at the dinner table with adults. Luckily, all of us kids got to eat with mom and daddy, but back then in my grandmother's time, my great grandma actually had rules, and until you could follow those rules you did not get to eat with the adults. And so mom said that her mom, Grandma Ruby, would say it was such a huge experience when you got to look at your little brother and sister and say, ha ha, you have to stay at the kid table. I know how to eat properly. I get to be with the adults. So I'm really glad etiquette that you're talking about. Sorry to talk so much, but it really means a lot to me that you're doing that.
No, thanks. I agree. And I understand the excitement around it. We had to sit at the kids' table as well. And also you had to do dishes. You were on dish duty, which is a big deal, right? It's like it takes so long to make the food. Then we're shoveling the food in and now we're cleaning for hours. Then we're completely exhausted. It is interesting. But, you know, speaking of exhaustion, I think it's it's in alignment in some ways can be with menopause. So I'm transitioning to our
Great for
topic
you.
of today, which is it's something that as a woman, I'm just going to speak for myself, that I don't think you're ever totally prepared for. And as you're younger and aging, you think to yourself, it's like you dread thinking that you're going to go through menopause because you're not relevant anymore. You're not viable. You're not vibrant, which is not true. But we don't really actually look at it in the workplace. You know, how do we create a workplace where menopause is not something that people are like, oh, do you see her? She's sweating over there. Her whole blouse is, her underarms are forward. She must be in menopause. So,
Oh man, she's talking back. Right.
so Diann, tell us a little bit about your friend, our guest today, June Potts.
I'm very excited to introduce June. I met her through my daughter Rachel. June is in England, and she specializes in the understanding of menopause, and is going to be able to share us some wonderful tips. And I think it's a topic that we should always talk about when we were younger. And I hope they still do this for young people. A mama gave me my special little book to read on my own. I mean, we went through it, but you're going to be turning into a young lady. And I was like, oh, this is so exciting. And so she was always preparing us. But there's not enough out there. And luckily, people talk about it and feel more comfortable now about talking about menopause and how it's something natural. So I'm excited that June is here to share all that with us.
Wonderful. Well, without further ado, let us bring on June Potts. June, welcome to the program.
Hi, it's lovely to meet you, ladies. Very much so. And well done on your book, Diann. And it's lovely to meet you, Dr. Jacalyn, finally.
Thank you, June. It's lovely to meet you. Where are you joining us from?
So I'm in a place called Chester. It's close to Liverpool in the UK.
I just love the UK, Diann, don't you? We've had so many amazing people from the UK on our programs.
Absolutely. Just beautiful people, and the history of the UK and etc. I'm kind of partial too because my ancestry is from all over the UK. You and
Well,
I
that makes sense.
and didn't even know it.
So whereabouts in the UK is that? Is that from down south, the north?
No, more central in the north. So,
the north.
Because
yeah, I'm up in the northwest.
Ireland. So yeah, I know where you are. I've been there. So
yeah,
nice.
June, so I don't know if it.
Here, Dr. Jacalyn.
I noticed. She definitely, June. You definitely have a different accent than the people I've interviewed before from the UK.
That's
so
because you must probably interview people who speak Queen's English from down south. I'm more up north and have more of an accent. So I have a Beatles accent because I come from where the Beatles come from.
That's right.
I love it. I can't even stand the sound of my own voice after I interview someone like you, because it's just so I love it. Your accent.
Oh, it's quite the opposite, really. I quite like the American accent. We're never happy, are we? We're never happy.
No, we never are. Jude, I don't know if you heard the discussion we were having when you were backstage, but menopause is such a big topic, and it does instill fear in many ways, because it's this unknown amount of time that it's going to last, and then certain things aren't going to work the way they used to, and things happen. And so I would love if you would just give us some overview about what is menopause and why is it important for you to take this topic on.
Right. Okay. Well, menopause signifies the end of reproduction, and it's sort of puberty in reverse. So when a woman comes to the end of a reproductive cycle, it's all about hormones. Those are the three sex hormones: estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. And it becomes an imbalance of those hormones, which is why a lot of women experience symptoms, menopause symptoms that can be hot flushes. I understand that's hot flashes in the US. Also, as well, insomnia, brain fog. That was my nemesis. A lot of women forget and struggle with their memory. and so often presented their GP or medical practitioner thinking that they had the onset of dementia. So menopause has the ability to affect women socially and professionally. And from my own experience, I was affected at work quite negatively, which then sort of filtered out into my social life, and it affected all parts of my life to the point that I really was in a desperate state, really. And that come after I had a hysterectomy at age 50. And you're so right, we're not very educated on the menopause, even though it will happen to every woman. Now, even I didn't know that it happened to every woman. And it's not until I become educated that I realised that. But I think where the biggest problem is that we're not aware and we're not educated. And so that is what I like to do now, is that I like to educate organisations to understand the impact of menopause and how it affects women, not only in the workplace, but also outside of the workplace. Because in the UK, I don't know whether it's the same in the US, but in terms of relationships, the highest rate of divorce is between age 45 and 55, which is the same age that women will transition through the menopause. So that's either, a coincidence or a consequence. And furthermore, you have women who, unfortunately, there was only something in the UK news this week about a lady who had taken her life. And the average age the highest rate of suicide in the UK is 51. And the average age for menopause in the UK is 51. Again,
Wow.
is it a consequence, or is it just coincidence? And this needs to stop. And usually what happens is menopause is trending in the UK now, and women are finding it easier to use their voices to tell their lived experiences of what happened in the workplace. But usually what happens is it takes somebody who says, I'm not prepared for other women to put up with what I put up with, in order to bring about change in the workplace. So it takes a brave woman to disclose their menopause status in work, because it is still seen with stigma and taboo. And for women who diagnose or divulge, their menopause status, it's fraught with worry as to whether they will be discriminated against, or whether there will be bias, that people will automatically think they're no longer competent to do their job. So there are lots of angles, and it's just, once you get into the subject, it's so fascinating as well.
Wow.
Yes, it is. Wow, thanks for all that great information. A couple of questions come to mind. You mentioned 45 to 55, the fact that that's the
Yes.
highest divorce rate during those years. So, does that mean that everyone falls into that, or can people go into menopause later? Can it last less than 10 years, more than 10 years?
Yeah, that is an average. What happens? There are three stages to menopause. So there's perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. So perimenopause can occur for between 3 to 4 years, and what it is, it's the first stage in the decline of hormones, and women start to experience symptoms, irregular periods, hot flushes or flashes is another example, but not every woman will experience it. And the one thing to take away from today is that menopause is different for every woman. So I've heard it being talked about as a fingerprint. It is totally different for every single woman. So the symptoms I experience will be totally different than the symptoms that you experience. Now, you asked me about whether it's 45 to 55. What we have is, you can have women who experience premature menopause, and that's before the age of 40. And that can be quite alarming for a number of people who are still hoping to have children, because infertility is part of menopause. Women can no longer get pregnant. However, in the perimenopause stage, women still can during that stage, even though they have irregular periods. Then you go on from perimenopause, which can last 3 to 4 years, into menopause. Menopause is signified by no periods for 1 year. And believe it or not, you're only actually in menopause for 1 day. So menopause is signified by a year of no periods for a continuous period. Then it's 1 day where you're in menopause, and then the next day you actually enter into postmenopause when symptoms start to ease. But you can be in that stage for between 4 to 5 years. So overall, you can be in menopause between 4 to 12 years in total. But there's premature menopause for women below 40 and early menopause for women who are below 45. And that affects 5% of women. And women who go into menopause early through premature menopause, it can affect 1 in 100.
Wow, thank you so much. I now know where I am. I've been wondering all this time, like which part of the menopause am I in? So I'm in postmenopause. So that could be, yeah. So my last period was when I was 55. So it's 3 years ago. So I've got probably what, 3 more years.
But it depends because it's different for every woman. So you will be coming out at the end of your menopause transition. And that's where it is. Menopause is a transition. It's not a condition. It's not a disease. It's not an illness. It's something that every woman will go through. And it's a natural part of life. It's a biological process. But there are an awful lot of women who do not realize, because there's no biological marker to say when you hit your 40th birthday or your 45th birthday, you will start to go through the menopause transition. There is no such thing. So therefore, a lot of women don't see it coming. A lot of women are unaware of the symptoms. And, I had a hysterectomy, a oophorectomy, it's called, and I had my ovaries removed. So I automatically went into menopause. Now, the reason why I had hysterectomy was I'd had years of struggling with endometriosis and PMT. And so I treated myself to a hysterectomy for my 50th birthday, believe it or not, to get rid of all those symptoms. And then I sort of found myself in menopause, and I didn't realize what challenges would be ahead for me. So I didn't recognize myself because I lost my confidence, and because I identified myself through my work. And I didn't realize I was showing menopausal symptoms such as irritability, mood swings, fatigue. And I was also textbook menopause because I was in what they call the sandwich generation. So what that actually means is that, I was looking after a mother who'd been diagnosed with dementia. I had a daughter who was leaving to go to university. So empty nest syndrome can also create stress for women, which emphasizes their symptoms. And also as well, my husband was recovering from cancer. So my stress levels were actually really high. And as a result, what happens in the body is that as your estrogen levels start to drop, your cortisol levels start to increase. So women find themselves more in the fight and flight mode. And so that's where, the irritability, the mood swings come into play, the fatigue, because your body is working harder. You're constantly in fatigue state. And that was exactly what was happening to me.
That's quite a birthday present you gave yourself.
Oh, it was.
I'm really
It was.
I don't know if excited is the same word, but I'm glad you brought up about the hysterectomy, because there was a book written on women's studies, and my parents ended up divorced after their six children and 25 years later. And I had my dad read this section, and this was 20 some years later. And I said, Daddy, read this about what happens to women after they have a hysterectomy. And Daddy read that, and tears just started rolling down his eyes. And he said, if somebody could have given me that information, my world would have been different with your mom. Because it was what you said, those mood swings. And all of a sudden, you have all your everything about being a woman taken out of you. And she became stronger, more irritable, could, all this kind of stuff. And whoa, what just happened to my life? So I'm so glad you brought that out, because I think it's important for our listeners to know, if they're experiencing that it's natural, right, June?
Absolutely. Well, Diann, if we don't understand what menopause is, how the hell are men supposed to understand what's going on in our bodies if we don't? And, I do have a couple of funny stories about it. Now, I really believe that men are great advocates of menopause. And when I did an MBA last year, and part of my study, my business consultancy study, was looking at menopause in the workplace, flushing out the taboo. And I spoke to female leaders looking at the barriers, what prevented them from disclosing their menopause in the workplace and getting behind gender related issues. And a lot of them said, I would never disclose to a male manager, who in their case, they were, senior leaders. So it would be the CEO. My experience is that men are so interested, they're curious, they ask questions. And I think it's women's perception of how men will react to menopause that is the problem. And some of the stories I've got, so I was speaking with an elderly neighbour down the road a couple of weeks ago, and he was asking me what I was doing these days. And I just love the shock value of telling men, especially, what I do. And he said, I think my wife might be going through that. Yeah, he is in his 70s, so she must have gone through it quite a while ago. And she has hot flushes. He said, also, I remember the windows were open every night. He said, and the bed covers were off, and then they were on. And he said, also, as well, she used to shout at me for knocking all the time. He said, and I do remember there was no sex whatsoever. And so, he didn't mean anything by it, but that was his recollection of menopause. And then a couple of weeks ago, I had some workmen in my home, and I had a plasterer and a joiner, and they were asking me what I did. I was telling them, they were like, oh, women, you go a bit mad, a bit, mental at that age, don't you? And I was saying, no, it's our hormones. We can't help it. And so I educated them while they were here. And then they came back a few weeks later, and there was a plumber with them, and they educated the plumber. And I was standing in the kitchen thinking, my job is done, because men, they really are intrigued by what menopause is. And all they want to do is know what the hell is going on with women in their lives.
Yes, absolutely. And they care and love you, and they want to support you, but they don't know how. But I think they're also curious, because eventually men go through it at a later state, and everything becomes a turtle. But I think that's why they're just.
but, for men, and what you said about your father, Diann, it is significant, isn't it? If men were aware to be able to support and provide that ecosystem in the home for women, and it's not just men, it's also as well children. So I read an article this week about a school in England, in the UK, Harrow, which is the most expensive school to attend in the UK. It's £43,000 a year to go there. And they're bringing in a menopause specialist to train their boys, these young men, about menopause. And not only so that they can show empathy and support their teachers, their mothers, what have you, but when they get older, so that they can support and they get into meaningful relationships, they can support that person and they're aware of what's going on. I don't know about in the US, but in the UK, there was a great, victory, it was referred to, because menopause is now taught in schools and secondary schools as part of reproductive health. And when you think about it, we talk about puberty, we talk about reproduction, but we don't talk about the end piece, which is menopause. And that is the bit that has got, it's covered in, it's enshrouded in myths and mystery, because women just haven't talked about it for years. And the great thing is now, especially in the UK, we've got Parliament looking at guidelines and looking at discrimination in the workplace, because believe it or not, in the UK, nearly 1 million women are believed to have left the workforce unable to cope with their menopause symptoms. And there are 13.9 million women in work, and 4.4 million are thought to be in transitioning through menopause and one of the stages of menopause. So menopause really matters, because when you think about women leaving the workforce in their 50s, they're taking with them all that experience. Also, as well, it's the cost to recruit. And then there's also the absenteeism to consider. And, 40 million sick days were taken as a result of menopause symptoms. And so that is a cost to businesses. And then you've also got presenteeism, where women attend work, but really, are not functioning properly because they haven't slept, and because they've got brain fog, because they've got lots of other issues going on.
Yes, really valid points. And I think something else, there's confusion because things happen to us, but we don't know if they're related to menopause, or our lives are so stressful, or we gained weight, or there's a million different things. And nothing, there's no handbook that says if you're experiencing this, or this, it could be menopause. So then we start beating ourselves up about all these symptoms that are showing up. So I don't know, at least that's the experience that I've had, as well as a number of women I've spoken to who are in the menopausal, what's it called? World transition. Thanks. Now you can get a blood test, at least here, you can get a blood test to tell you where you are. So that might help understanding the symptoms. June, something else that I've heard a lot of talk about is trying to recreate the way our skin was, the way our body was, by taking supplements or estrogen or all kinds of hormones. What are your thoughts about this?
Right. Well, when I had my hysterectomy, I was provided with estrogen patches, so I don't need progesterone because I don't have any womb, and progesterone plays a part where it protects the lining of the womb. So I was given estrogen patches with a sheet just about it, really, and didn't really take much notice of it because I thought, great, no longer got endometriosis. I won't have any PMS anymore, so life's great. And after 4 weeks, I was hit by a train with all these other challenges that I never really thought about. And what I would say was, I used the patches, they didn't agree with me. However, I didn't realize that there was 70 different preps, and that you could get oral, you could get gels, you could get sprays, lozenges, and it's not. And so I just didn't use HRT until I become educated, and that was last year. I went to see my GP again, and I now use a gel which I just rub into the top of my leg each morning, and it's cleared up my hot flushes, it's cleared up my brain fog. So I would never have been able to do something like this a year ago, because I just would have lost my words mid-sentence, and I didn't have confidence. And so I feel like it's given me my life back. But I realised that HRT isn't for everybody. And that all goes back to 2002, to the World Health Initiative, whereby there was a study done about HRT and breast cancer. And when the results of that study were released, over 80% of women stopped taking HRT immediately and have struggled ever since. So I was sort of thinking, when the patches didn't work, I thought, well, I'm not really too bothered about going on HRT. But what I've found since I've been on it, and I've found something that suits me, is that I am now the person I could have been for those 6 years. And it's sad, really, because I did struggle, and I struggled psychologically and physically. So for me, HRT is a great thing. It's not for everybody. And, what I do, I'm sort of on a passion. I'm on sort of a mission with, is testosterone. So testosterone isn't available. Female testosterone isn't available in the UK for women, and this is despite the fact that before a woman goes into menopause, they will produce 3 times more testosterone than they do estrogen. However, the reason it's not available in the UK is because in 2012, the company, pharmaceutical company who owned the license, decided that it wasn't profitable to make female testosterone. So as a result, they stopped producing it. So women only have the option on the NHS, which is National Health Service, to have estrogen and progesterone. And so it's the forgotten hormone, and it's really prescribed to women by their local GP practices. However, if you pay to go and see a private a private menopause doctor, you can be prescribed female testosterone that is imported from Australia. And this is the missing link for a lot of women because it helps with bone health, brain health, skin as well. So you were talking about that. Your collagen reduces by 30%. Just soon after menopause, you enter into the menopause stage, and it declines very rapidly, and that's why women age. So, in terms of these hormones, I was logged into a session with the Royal Society of Gynecologists a few weeks ago, and it was entitled "What Do Women Want?" And what came out of it was that women just want their hormones back. We just want to live our life the way we have done. We don't want special treatment. We don't want special treatment in the workplace. We just want to live happy and healthy and age well, because that's what it's all about. Because if we don't get these hormones, then we could be in danger of getting osteoporosis when we're older, or it can affect cardio health, but it also affects so many other health areas in our life, that it's important that we're aware.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that. I've known some people who have had, I don't know what it's called, but they actually have this pellet injected into them and it releases hormones. Have you heard of this?
An implant, yes, I have. And you can get implants for if you're on a dual HRT prep, so that's estrogen and progesterone. So if you still have your ovaries, or you have your womb and your ovaries, then you will be on a joint prep, which is a combined. And can I ask? I meant to look up about, is testosterone popular within the US? Is it prescribed by medical practitioners? Yeah, so you can get implants for testosterone as well, but you can't in the UK.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But now
So
I've heard there's side effects.
Sorry.
Sorry.
There are side effects with every HRT prep and every medication that you take, because everybody's biological chemistry is different, and so that's why every woman experiences menopause differently, because we're all different. No one is the same. So yeah, there are side effects, and they're debilitating side effects. And what I say to women is there are 70 different preps out there, but in the UK, if you go to a GP, the chances are that they will prescribe you with oral medication, because it's cheaper and it's all cost related, because it all goes through the NHS. However, that may not necessarily be the right prep for you, because it goes through it has to travel through your liver and is synthesized in your liver. Whereas if you have a transdermal prep, which is either gel or it's spray, then all the patches, then it goes straight into your bloodstream. So that is a better way. But the reason why it's not diagnosed, it's not provided on prescription automatically, is due to cost. And that's where it all comes down to, as with all medication for females, money.
Yes.
Wow. So many points we could go on from there. So one thing I'm wondering is, are there any holistic approaches that you can
Yes.
take?
Well, there are supplements that you can take, and there is estrogen that is naturally available in foods. So, the likes of raspberries, flaxen seeds, chickpeas, there are estrogen within those types of foods. Sesame seeds is another one. And so you can get estrogen through those foods, but it's often not enough if you have severe symptoms. And HRT is sometimes the option that women, may need to go down to be able to totally solve their problems rather than just putting a plaster on it, basically. Also, as well, there is something like black cohosh. There's oil of primrose, dong quai, which is a Chinese remedy. And there are these kinds of things that you can purchase from health shops, but there are fors and against those. So there are some people saying that they're a waste of money, and then there's other people who say no, that they really work. But the best thing for menopause is a healthy lifestyle. So the rainbow vegetables, having protein and calcium in every meal, and they are just following a healthy diet can support menopause. Also with exercise, so it's weight bearing exercise is the best form of exercise for menopause. And a lot of women are shocked by that because they were led to believe that it's yoga and meditation, those kinds of things. But that's for the stress relief, because as I mentioned earlier, we spend a lot of our time in fight and flight mode because our body is constantly under pressure. And so therefore the yoga is part of the stress management process, as is the meditation. So it's about getting in enough exercise, about 3 to 4 times a week, to be able to support your bones and your muscle mass, and release them endorphins so that you feel better. Drink as well, drink lots of water, avoid smoking, and to avoid flushes as well. It's also advisable to avoid alcohol, caffeine, but what I would say, and life is still good, is that dark chocolate is still good because it has estrogen in it. So we can still eat chocolate, ladies, and we can say that it's good for our health. But the alcohol and the coffee, I'm afraid, will need to take a back seat. So it's just like with anything else. And what I would always say is that menopause, we often talk about mental health, but we very rarely talk about mental ill health, and we very rarely talk about menopause health as well. And a lot of the antecedents of mental health, a lot of the symptoms of mental health are antecedents of menopause in middle-aged women. So if you present, look, what we have in the UK is that if women present to their GP with low mood, depression, anxiety, panic attacks, the doctor will often prescribe antidepressants rather than think of it being menopause or perimenopause. And really the clinical pathways are both different. It's HRT for to help with those psychological symptoms of menopause and not antidepressants. And I hear that so often, that women are misdiagnosed, and it can also be the other way as well. So when you're over 45, you mentioned earlier on, Dr. Jacalyn, about blood tests. Blood tests can identify where your hormones are. So it's the follicle stimulation hormone. If that is high, then that will affect a woman and the symptoms. So it is important to think about mental health and what we do from a lifestyle point of view.
Absolutely. Wow.
I think we need to
Diann?
have you back to even just discuss that whole mental health issue, and also because of the holistic, I could talk all day about what I went through and all the different methods. And so you're just a wealth of this knowledge.
Life stories are really what brings it to life, isn't it? And it's now popular culture is saying it's okay to talk about it. So yeah, and we didn't even touch on in the workplace either.
Well, that's what I mean. It's such a big topic. So June, we'd love to have you come back again very, very soon.
Yes, absolutely. It'd be my pleasure. Sorry if I talk too much, but I'm really passionate about it.
Yeah, we want you to.
No, we love it. We love it. We've been scrolling your website information. We also put it into the contacts. But for people listening on the radio, what is the best way to get in touch with you, June?
Yeah, I have a website called Menopause 360. So please contact me via that. So that's www.menopause360.co.uk. And I'll respond to anything that comes through from there. You can also email me at june@menopause360.co.uk.
All right. Thank you, June Potts. It's been a pleasure meeting you and talking all things menopause.
Such a pleasure to meet the both of you, especially you, Diann, as well, because, we've been emailing for a while now. It's my first time in contact with you, Dr. Jacalyn. It's been a pleasure.
Well, I'm glad Rachel put us all in touch. So
yay, Rachel.
Good luck
Thanks,
with your
June.
booth.
Okay.
And good luck.
Thank you. We'll look forward to seeing you again soon. Please go ahead to our website and book
Bye-bye.
again. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Wow, Diann.
But it all goes back to, if you listen to what she said at the end, fitness, exercise, it all works together. So
Yes, it does.
The show that you started, Dr. Jacalyn, Fashion, Fitness, Travel, and Leisure, I mean, it's such a wealth of information. But I think this whole menopause could be an absolute show all on its own for men and women. Just to throw it out there to you live on the air.
Yes, let's do it. Just because it affects everyone in some way or another. And I also think we didn't get to discuss this with June, but at least in this generation, if you got to be a certain age because you can't reproduce, then it's kind of like, well, there's no value to that. Yeah, that's life is for the person going through it and also trying to attract a mate. It's kind of like, well, you can't reproduce, so we don't want to be with you. We're going to go younger. And
right?
Exactly.
They turn into a turtle. So there you go.
Right. Exactly. Well, we have to wrap up because we've got the United Kitchens coming up right after this. So Diann, I'm going to spotlight you. Yay! And please share with our audience the best way to get in touch with you and find your books so they can purchase them.
Sure. So everyone, thank you for always listening. And we want to hear from you. But you can email me or go to my website, diannfloydboehm.com, DIANNFLOYD, B as in boy, OEHM.com. And for those in the United States, I want to wish you all a happy Thanksgiving as well.
Thank you, Diann. Yay, Thanksgiving. And for those of you, yes, you as well. We've got 9 shows today. We've got 5 more coming up. So our next one is the United Kitchens, and that is with my co-hosts Simon McDonald and Ricky McKenna. So Diann and I are saying goodbye. Thank you, June. And we look forward to seeing you again next week for our programs. But come back and see us for the other 5 today. Bye.